It's one way. Go through secondary school, try to get to 7 years. You do O-levels or whatever the equivalent is now after year 5, and then whatever the equivalent of A-levels is after year 7. Then you go to college, and you continue along this path. And that's what you do. That's all we know what to say. The problem is, the higher up you go, the more you need to kind of figure out not just to study, but what to study. And it is a tall order to expect young people, all of them, to know what they want to be for the rest of their lives. Because all too often, many of us don't figure that out until late in life. Some have midlife crisis, some pivot from one career to another. In my case, I had no clue. And since I had no clue, I had a very hard time applying myself in any significant, meaningful way past a certain point. And to tell you that I had no clue, I think somewhere around 10 to 15 years ago, maybe more than that, one of my aunts asked my mom or told my mom about a radio presenter course, because she identified certain qualities in my personality that might do well in some form of media. And I immediately brushed that off when my mom told me, because I, believe it or not, I'm an introvert, and I'm not someone that was good at public speaking. And it was only because I had multiple hobbies that helped build that up over time. And even when I came in front of the camera here, it then took some time for me to adjust and to learn and to be comfortable with doing this. But the point is, I never thought about a career in media until I did. And this is one of the areas I guess you could kind of say I've been lucky, even though a career in media right now, it's not necessarily, it might seem glamorous, but it's not necessarily the easiest, not in a small market like this. And maybe if I knew this end point, I might have been better prepared, and I might have better prepared myself throughout my life. I would be in a better position now. It's hard to say. And it is that, I guess you could say, struggle. And I feel as though as society continues to progress and the pace of life continues to move faster, these simple, fundamental questions that each of us must answer: what do I want to do with the rest of my life? Perhaps we're failing more and more to answer it, because the answer requires a lot more complex planning than it used to be. People in my parents' generation could have gotten a relatively decent job with just O-levels. And because of GATE, the one thing GATE did was move the goalposts. That's it. We did not necessarily see an increase in economic activity, growth in terms of jobs, not just the number, but the level, the sophistication of the jobs being offered, to find an outlet for all these new university graduates. So what used to need just O-levels might now need a bachelor's. And when you think about it, what we have done is, because the conversation about the single high-stakes exam of the SA has come back up in the news, and I did not see these articles to prompt me to have this topic, but I thought it was timely, because when you think about it, back in the past, you had common entrance, then you had O-levels, and that was it. But now we've successfully, if you think about it, taken that stress of the SCA, and we've expanded it to tertiary education, essentially. I mean, not that a lot of people want to work in fast food restaurants, but to be honest, I think we need to eliminate certain stigmas. But think about it now. In order to get what is viewed socially as a reasonable job or a prestigious enough job, not necessarily a prestigious job, but you know, respectable enough. Now there's this pressure to do relatively well, or at least get a bachelor's. And it's not that different than an SEA, but at least with an SEA, you're kind of told, look, this is what the exam is, just do it. But with the rest of your life, from the middle of secondary school on, you have to start making critical decisions, while still technically having the stress of, well, there are these exams that I have to pass. There's this obstacle academically that I have to pass. And if I don't pass it, there's no room for me in society, depending on the path I've chosen, because the competition and the only indicator that we seemingly accept is academic standards. And if you don't have it, you don't qualify. Experience, be damned. Actual working ability, be damned. Which is a funny thing, because not everybody with a degree actually is able to do the job. Not everybody that passed the bar is actually able to be an effective lawyer. Not every doctor do you want to actually tell you, to actually see you and give you medical advice that you will want to follow. Doctor, dentist, take your pick. And I do think part of it is we have this one-size-fits-all oversimplified mentality, which is potentially harming our students. And I've used this phrase quite a bit now. We make one mistake at the beginning of a process, and then every decision after ends up being wrong or practically doesn't work out. And ironically, it's not necessarily proven as a causation, but there's a correlation in the United States. And I've mentioned this before. But in the US, it's now results-based analysis. It's now seen that a heavy reliance on digital devices seemingly goes hand in hand with an increasing correlation of lower test scores. And the concern is that, on some level, how the devices are used, or just the sheer presence of devices at all, is harming students' attention spans and capacity to learn. And they're not necessarily focusing on what they're doing, in part because they're accustomed to using screens, and things becomes, a lot of people, daily usage of computers, digital devices is very surface level, as opposed to when you have a book and a pen or a pencil. And it's almost like when they say don't do certain things in bed, because then you'll get accustomed to being up, and whether it's reading or watching TV or whatever, just use your bed for sleeping. I think it's somewhere along those lines. Because not a lot of people necessarily write down anything extensively with little to no focus. And psychologically, it's almost like a trick of the mind. Now, this hasn't been proven yet, but it just goes to show that in a lot of cases, and our society is not unique on this, but you get an idea and you just assume it to be the best thing ever, and you chase it down. But more importantly, you don't necessarily consider all the subtle nuances of what that idea might mean. So we just want to digitize. Meanwhile, the US, certain education districts, they're trying to go back to analog. Now, we might have needed it for COVID, but at the end of the day, COVID results ain't looking so hot. And so that's one aspect of it, where I fear we might be adding extra complication and failure into the system. Another thing is, because they say the future is in a book bag, but if we don't have the jobs for these educated people, what's the point? Now, we did succeed as a society with the oil and gas sector. The problem is, well, the oil and gas sector grew jobs because we had oil. But every economy on some level has to transition to what essentially is described as a services-based economy, not a resource extraction economy. Because at some point the resources will run out, particularly if you're a smaller country. And then what you're going to do? But we didn't have to work hard to build up an oil and gas sector. It was built up inherently just because of the existence of stuff in the ground. Foreign money came in to kickstart the process because they wanted that stuff in the ground. But do we have a catalyst for what comes after fossil fuels for our economy like that? Dare I say no. But more importantly, it now reaches the point where, and we've seen this, you've gone through all the hurdles and obstacles of these high-stress environments, from SCA to CAPE, or into now university, group projects, final exams, all of that done. And we're not talking about people with English majors now. Yes, I understand, having an English lit major in Trinidad and Tobago, not a lot of job opportunities there. But we're talking about people that went to law school, that went to medical school, that can't make it as lawyers and doctors because we didn't necessarily think things through with all of the subtlety. If we graduate all of these doctors, where are they all going to go? For those that can't get enough of an income or a job here, can they go abroad without having to start all over again? Did we think it through? All of the lawyers we have, is there enough work for them? Maybe, maybe not. Those that are successful, to some extent, how much of it is based off of luck? And then what you end up is people in our society who are highly educated that can't get work in their field. And on some level, how is that much difference when compared to a young man, usually a young man, sometimes a young woman, who didn't have a clue of what he was meant to do with his life and stumbled through it all the way from the beginning, doesn't really have much academic credentials to his name because he never figured out what was his interest to pursue in the first place, and his career prospects, 20s, 30s, 40s, never amounted to much of anything. Generally speaking, for people like that, we look at them and say, well, you wasted your life. But his life choices were predicated on decisions he had to make as a 15-year-old. 15-year-old is not an adult. 14-year-old is not an adult. His life choices are predicated in part on decisions he had to make as a 10-year-old. I assume, I hope, that's when you start studying for the SCA in earnest. Maybe 10, maybe 9. And the choices is not necessarily what subjects to do, but you still have to make a choice on how hard you're going to work, how much effort you're going to put in. And maybe some get away with natural intelligence at the SCA level. But the higher you go, unless you're a genius, that's not going to work. And what happens with all of those people? They're not necessarily going to become gangsters and criminals, right? Some might. But more importantly, we will have a generation of a society, or more than that, where arguably we were just not as productive as we should have been, as we needed to be, in order to prepare our nation for whatever comes next. And that was one of the things that I thought about. That end result, before I even tied it together with the limitations of our human development model. We have low expectations for ourselves. And we feed into that every day. We have low expectations for our politicians. We have low expectations for the people that provide us customer service. I was at our drive-thru yesterday. Fast food. You expect it to be fast. You don't expect it to be that fast. Kudos to that team of workers. Don't necessarily want to say the brand. But that was a surprise to me. It wasn't the norm. It wasn't the norm. We don't have high expectations for a lot of things in our country. And I think on some level, while there's some degree of expectations for students, yes, because we have this automatic path, we just assume you do this and you'll be fine, not realizing it's not that simple anymore. You don't just get 8 passes in O-levels, whatever it is, you have 8 passes, you're good. You don't just get a degree. You have to actually have a plan. But the plan has to start long before you're old enough to have arguably a mature thought. And the reality is we have low expectations of ourselves as a society. We underutilize ourselves. We don't demand excellence for ourselves. If you think about it, you will come up with examples of local citizens, sons and daughters of Trinidad and Tobago, who have shown international excellence for decades. Decades. We've proven we could do it in sport, in art, in science, at least to some extent, in literature. And yet, for all of the potential that we have, our country seems quite mundane, doesn't it? Dr. Emery Brown apparently had something interesting that I don't technically agree with. He said that, or he said that he was convinced Mr. Manning, this is the 10-year anniversary of his death, would have been proud of the PNM in its current form and will be working alongside its members to return it to government. Now, I agree with the last part. He will probably do that. Maybe. Especially now, now that Dr. Utarali is no longer political leader, that political divide might not be as practical or might not be as present. But to say that he will be proud of the party in its current form, I have a hard time believing in that. But let's go a step further. Because I do believe he came from a generation of leaders that, at least on some level, tried to improve things. Now, whether he succeeded or not is a different story. Whether his ideas were the best or not, we could have that as a separate conversation. Some of his ideas, I do believe, had merit, and we would never get a chance to see if they would have worked or not, unfortunately. But what would he think, not of the party that he led for so long, but the country that he worked for so long? And I understand a lot of people have negative views of our politicians. All I know is this, generally speaking, and I could be wrong, but from my understanding, Mr. Manning, the one thing his reputation does not have is the reputation of being vastly enriched once he left office. You know, it's not as though his family enjoyed a grand lifestyle when he was not prime minister. So, what would he think of this nation? What would Mr. Pandey now? He was not too long ago still with us. But dare I say, after his passing, things got a little bit more extreme. And let's move on from politicians. What about the thought leaders of yesterday? The Calypsonians from before. I just had Twiggy on last week, or the week before. But what about the old school Calypsonians, who were the bards that brought the news to the people, who are no longer here? I guess one of the things we could also ask is, what genuinely do the grand elders of Calypso truly think about what's going on? Maybe I am an alarmist, but I think we've allowed the train to snowball into a runaway without a conductor. And the speed or the pace that we've currently reached, maybe it's now no longer a if, but when. I guess it's apt, right? We're a nation of people who are prone to speeding, even when it's not necessary. We're impatient, even when we technically don't have a great reason as to why we're impatient. We just are. And yet, we are so complacent when it comes to certain important things because we don't know how to come together. And we don't know how to look beyond an oversimplified vision that's easy to achieve as opposed to something greater that might be harder to achieve. But all nations need to strive for that, because that is the difference between, at some point, success or failure. It's one thing for you as an individual to have failure in your life. It's another thing for a nation to have failure in its history. It's not something you easily recover from. And it's a compounding situation. All right. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll welcome Ashraf and switch gears back to the national security topics, at least some of them. Stay tuned. This is Talking About the WSND Content Capital. We'll be right back after this.
Get ready for Generations of Steel, the sweetest pan show bar none.
Featuring Desperados,
Shell Invaders,
Massey Trinidad All-Stars,
First Citizens Supernovas,
and the pride of the South, Fun Clear. Plus their talented youth bands. Saturday, July 11th.
at the iconic Grandstand, Queen's Park, Savannah.
Showtime, 6 p.m. till 10:30 p.m.
All performing their most exciting and multifaceted repertoire. Coolers allowed.
Early bird ticket.
2 persons on 1 ticket for only $350.
The quadraphonic tickets admits 4 persons for only $600.
The single pan tickets cost only $200.
By public demand, early bird tickets remain till Saturday, 4th July.
Additional $10 off for online purchases.
Children 12 and under, accompanied by an adult. Admission is free. Get yours now. Available at ICNTT.com.
At Crosby St. James.
All Kenny Sports.
All Extra Foods Supermarket.
Westby, Tagarigua, Athletes by the Park.
Jumbo Foods Baratari.
GAC Electrical, opposite Starlight. Tigger Martin, Main Room. Tarp Office, Belmont. Mirage Westside Supermarket. Arima. Anderson Fashion, opposite Citygate. Western Union, Tuna Puna, and all participating bands. Presented by Super Pan Man, Dane Gulston and Friends.
Supported by CCNTV6, the Express newspaper, and I-95.5 FM.
For more info, call 732-3402.
Get ready for the biggest business-to-business event of the year, the Trade and Investment Convention, TIC, happening July 9th to 11th at the Center of Excellence, Macoya. Doors open 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. on business days, July 9th and 10th, and 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. on Consumer Day, Saturday, July 11th. A business dress code is in effect on business days. Park and ride services will be available from Constantine Park and the UETGR North Car Park on all 3 days, with additional service from NAM DevCo on July 9th and 11th. Register online at www.ttma.com/tick and attend free. The deadline for free registration is Wednesday, July 8th. After that, admission is $50 at the door. The Trade and Investment Convention is proudly sponsored by the Ministry of Trade, Investment and Tourism, Exim Bank, Ballroops Group, and Robust Security Network Limited. Don't miss Trinidad and Tobago's premier business networking and investment event. We look forward to seeing you at TIC.
Maybe he landed here totally by coincidence. But if by chance he's admiring your fresh coat of Benjamin Moore soft sky blue, well, that's a pretty high compliment. Coming from an expert.
Most common presentation are menstrual disturbances, so prolonged and heavy and often very painful periods. So rather than a fairly normal 5-6 day menstrual cycle period, they might get incredibly heavy bleeding for 2, 3, 4, 5 days, and it might be prolonged to 7. This bleeding month on month on month can then lead to a drop in the hemoglobin levels and anemia, which can be very tiring. They can also be very painful. Some women will bleed constantly and not have a cycle at all. They'll bleed for 30 days, 40, 50, 60 days.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
In this day of stay at home and work from home, home has never meant more than it does today. Whether you're looking to buy, rent or build your new home, now is the time to get going. Gittins & Gittins real estate agents are here to take you to that place of your dreams. Let us take you home. We help you find that rental to rest along the way or journey with you to find your home destination. Investors and commercial enterprises too, call us and we'll walk the distance to place your business in just the right location. Owners, leave the headaches to us. We'll find your tenants or buyers while you stay at home. We'll even manage your property at your bidding. Anything real estate, come home to Gittins & Gittins Real Estate. Call us at 760-3280 or 747-1220 or visit us at 16 Fifth Street in Woodbrook.
Get ready for the biggest business-to-business event of the year, the Trade and Investment Convention, TIC, happening July 9th to 11th at the Center of Excellence, Macoya. Doors open 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. on business days, July 9th and 10th, and 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. on Consumer Day, Saturday, July 11th. A business dress code is in effect on business days. Park and ride services will be available from Constantine Park and the UETGR North Car Park on all 3 days, with additional service from NAMDevco on July 9th and 11th. Register online at www.ttma.com/tick and attend free. The deadline for free registration is Wednesday, July 8th. After that, admission is $50 at the door. The Trade and Investment Convention is proudly sponsored by the Ministry of Trade, Investment and Tourism, Exim Bank, Ballroops Group, and Robust Security Network Limited. Don't miss Trinidad and Tobago's premier business networking and investment event. We look forward to seeing you at TIC.
Get ready for Generations of Steel, the sweetest pan show bar none.
Featuring Desperados,
Shell Invaders,
Massey Trinidad All-Stars,
First Citizens Supernovas,
and the pride of the South, Fun Claire. Plus their talented youth bands. Saturday, July 11th.
at the iconic Grandstand, Queen's Park, Savannah.
Showtime 6 p.m. till 10:30 p.m.
All performing their most exciting and multifaceted repertoire. Coolers allowed.
Early bird tickets.
2 persons on 1 ticket for only $350.
The quadraphonic tickets admits 4 persons for only $600.
The single pan tickets cost only $200.
By public demand, early bird tickets remain till Saturday, 4th July.
Additional $10 off for online purchases.
Children 12 and under, accompanied by an adult. Admission is free. Get yours now. Available at islandetickets.com.
At Crosby St. James.
All Kenny Sports.
All Extra Foods Supermarket.
Westby, Tagarigua, Athletes by the Park.
Jumbo Foods Baratari.
Gag Electrical, opposite Starlight. Digger Martin Main Road. Tarp Office, Belmont. Mirage Westside Supermarket. Arima. Anderson Fashion, opposite Citygate. Western Union, Tuna Puna, and all participating bands. Presented by Super Pan Man, Dane Gulston and Friends.
Supported by CCNTV 6, The Express Newspaper, and I-95.5 FM.
For more info, call 732-3402.
And we're back here and talking about the WSND Connect Capital, and I am joined, as I am usually on Fridays, by the one and only disaster management expert, former police officer, proud of his age, Ashraf Ali.
Yes, Sean, I have some grades. Leave it alone. Leave my grades alone.
Hey, that was just retaliation. That's
not right, sir. I'm on in Trinidad and Tobago.
All right, so before we go any further, I'd just like to say once again, we're going to talk about highly contentious topics. It is not pronouncing or has anything to do with the question of guilt or innocence. Rather, we're speaking, again, and this is another perspective with regards to certain concerns about the processes by which we see important functions being done or potentially not done. And of course, in this case, it's with regards to the utilization of preventative detention orders. And in my opinion, I won't speak for Ashraf, maybe he'll agree or disagree in a second, the over-reliance right now on preventative detention orders, but now potentially not just to deal with criminals and gangsters, but you can potentially, because we don't have enough context in the gazetted detention orders with regards to the reasons given, you can interpret it, as I imagine some might, that this was utilized to deal with people who had strong things to say about the government. Now, to what extent was it things that they had all intentions of carrying out? I guess it's for the court to decide. Ashraf?
Yeah, sure. Morning, Trinidad and Tobago. They will always have controversial issues with respect to the use of the preventative PDOs, because the rule of law and the processes in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service has not, is still existing. So initially, in the specific case, there was warrant issues. Now, the question a lot of persons have in their minds, and even for me, is that it is not about the individual per se in my book. Mm-hmm. I am looking at it from a different perspective. I am looking at the allegations made. And we have to come out of the the so-called political spin on it that they want to use, and the 1%ers and what is good for this one and good for that one. And let us understand this. The allegations made is serious enough to warrant an arrest, an investigation. The allegation is conspiracy to commit murder against two of the highest office holders in Trinidad and Tobago. If that is not serious enough, then what is serious enough? So it matters, in my opinion, it matters not who said it. That is not for me. Why I am not discussing who was the accusers or what.
Or the accused.
The accused, or where they lie in the status quo within in Trinidad and Tobago. I am looking at what the allegations are, and that's a serious allegation. And allegations of that nature, when you look at what was outlined in the PDO, we have to be very cognizant and stop making it political alone. It may appear to be political from both sides because persons using it as political. I am not here to discuss that. I am here, sorry, not discuss. I am here to show a different perspective and people to understand a different perspective. That is a serious offense. To conspire to commit murder of the two of the highest officials in Trinidad and Tobago. Now, here is where it gets very tricky. Conspiracy in itself is wide-ranging. There's a lot of things, a lot of actions that they would have, and information and intelligence and evidence they would have gathered to come up with conspiracy. Conspiracy is not just like murder where the act itself.
Yeah.
Right? There's a lot of things that would have been behind the scenes that you and I would not have been privy to. Good? So we have to allow some processes to take place where if those information is presented in the court or should be presented in the court at some point in time, the accused will be able to defend those actions. So we have to understand what conspiracy means. It's a conversation, it's somebody planning to do something behind the scenes. Good?
Planning to do something with intent. I think one of the issues is because this situation, I'm not saying that they're innocent. I am saying that I have a lot of questions, as in this is a 3-person conspiracy, 2 women and 1 guy, in that I have no problem believing that they could be involved in a conspiracy. But if you're gonna pull the trigger on PDOs with regards to them, are they the only conspirators?
So then, let us transition from that to earlier in the year when the state of emergency was existing. Started. The first set, where there was intelligence that suggests there are groups of criminal elements that was planning.
I hate to say this, but it seems as though every time there's a threat against the government,
it's
a new threat against the government.
So if you take it basically from the context of what conspiracy is shown,
even the NAR didn't have this many threats against their government.
So understand what I'm saying. If you are setting if you're using a foundation and setting the standard for transparency, it should be transparent across the board. So the first set of individuals or the criminal elements or the individuals who initially that we heard that there was intelligence that suggests that these individuals were planning to harm high office holders. Isn't that a conspiracy at the same time? Why haven't all those individuals been hauled before the courts, have PDO, are talking to everybody?
So you're talking about from the very beginning, when Minister Sturge was in his constituency and a funny-looking car, right, caused his security to have to take him to a police station to secure him. Why they didn't pick up the people in the car that was moving suspiciously?
So you understand what I am saying? Now, the manner in which this state of emergency, is being dealt or handled, is being handled in some of the these situations, it is not given a proper transparent, it's not transparent enough, or say it's a balance. It's a balance because we have Mr. Samaru's dad.
Yes.
The late Samaru dad. All right, who made a statement.
Christopher Samaru,
the father who made a statement. Yes, he made a statement on public on things. When he was interviewed and person failed to realize that, and this is what I'm saying. Just now you was talking about being a presenter.
Yes.
He went on a show and he was asked his opinion.
No, I'll say this. You still have to be responsible for what you say, but it was prompted, yes.
I'm just saying, he went to an interview. He was asked by the presenter. They didn't have control of how he would have.
But this is not him on a soapbox in Woodford Square saying.
He did in fact come back and he said it was about his lawyers, and he said it was misinterpreted in how his narrative is. You could understand. I could understand how hurt he is because of the situation that his son is going through. Fair enough. That doesn't mean that you can say what you want and get away with it. Good?
Yeah.
But his statement was against all police officers. If you see them, make a guy gonna shoot them, right? That's a serious statement. Fair enough?
Right.
Why hasn't he been charged as it? Why PDO? That's a serious offense you're talking about here. You're making threats to
and
all national
the incident was public. So if you can't get evidence, it was a radio broadcast. If you can't get sufficient evidence to charge him when the statements were a public radio broadcast, you'll never get evidence enough to charge him.
Why use a PDO? Why use a PDO now? And I'm simply saying he committed a serious offense. There is the law for that. You don't need a PDO for that. Charge the individual, let him go before the court, right? Let him get his bail, let him get his day in court, and let the matter be dealt with the court. Fast and efficient. You understand? There are other persons who make statements about other individuals on social media. Let them go before the court. Use what is existing in the laws, and do not use the PDO as the end all for investigation.
Well, I hate to say this, but the more you want to tell people, stop assuming it's political. But the more I think about it, I see multiple avenues, right, with each example that you give, where political motivations fit as explanations. Now, they vary, but let's just take Mr. Samaru's case. We don't want him to talk. We can't charge him, but we could hold him under PDO, right? And the PDO seemed to be like the latest iteration of a shortcut for law enforcement, and we were okay with it when we assumed it was gangsters.
Exactly. So when the average individual, the average citizens, the law-abiding citizens who go afoul of the law now because of whatever situation they face, and they tend to voice their opinions, and how they voice opinion. I'm not saying everybody is entitled to voice opinion. There's a manner in which there's a responsible way to do it, and there's a consequence to it. And I'm simply saying, let them face the consequences. Consequences cannot be a PDO. They committed an offense straight off the books of Trinidad and Tobago.
A PDO is more like a holding pattern, not an end result.
Exactly. The investigation should have reached its endpoint, reach the closing point, charges laid, person get his day in court.
The thing is, if you listen to the rumors with regards to Minister Stage, you will understand, or you will suspect why they didn't think to use PDOs in that case, right? And it seems as though these various so-called threats all come from different scenarios that have different motivations, and you know, certain things the government doesn't necessarily want to be aired in public. In this case, they seemingly want to ventilate it to the public. But then now, because this is the thing, this is another issue that somebody brought up, although it's not apples to apples. With the Joshua Samaru shooting, we didn't hear nothing for 4 months. It was almost like if, oh my gosh, they caught us with, this is how it looks. I'm not saying this is what the commissioner thought, but it comes across as though the video footage exposed the police service. So they spent 4 months. People do think this, because one of my callers implied this yesterday or the day before. They took 4 months to try and figure out what they're going to present to the DPP to try to cover this situation. This is what some people think. And I can't tell them that they're wrong because I have nothing to provide them to disprove the theory. Now, when you have that situation now where you are utilizing the law in this way.
Sean, that is where we are in a very dangerous position, and I will bring it back to where we are actually in a crisis situation when it comes to our constitutional rights. Because the PDO and a state of emergency is in fact a process in where some of your rights and privileges have been suspended.
Right, but let me finish the point because I did forget it midway. I apologize. But notice in this case, there was leaks to the press. Well, I say leaks because senior officers who have not been identified, even where they work, if it's ministry, they say national security officials, very blanket. Senior officers reveal this information. How is it your radio silent over the Samru shooting? But we technically got the detention order before it was gazetted. Right? Or practically got the detention order before it was gazetted. We got the details of the detention order before it was gazetted. All of a sudden, oh my gosh, there's conspiracy, how do we know this? We didn't know what Cassidy was going to be charged with until months after. We didn't even know that she had a gun. That was never confirmed until. But in this case, all of a sudden, we're getting told upfront, oh, conspiracy. And the problem is the inconsistency. Because I think, again, you have a situation where it's not as though people are going to say, oh, well, this wealthy elite must be innocent. No one is saying that. We don't know if they're innocent or guilty. I don't know them. I don't know if they're trustworthy individual or not, if they're respected members of the community or not. I have literally never spoken to anybody about these individuals to have any kind of opinion about them. What I do know is I see different standards of the authorities. I wouldn't even say law enforcement. The authorities operating. And that, when you trying to parent a child and you're inconsistent, how does that work out?
So,
much less
so
a society about that.
And then king councils have been appointed. If king councils have been appointed, there is in my humble opinion, people listen, in my humble opinion, it means that they're expecting this to go all the way up to the Privy Council.
I'll do one better. Do you know in the UK, and now it's been more documented, if I am living in the UK and I share a meme that might be maybe critical or mean to the police, I could be arrested.
So is it that we are anticipating this matter, and it's a proper way to deal with a situation because you can anticipating all the outcomes and you're preparing for it. It's preparing. You're preparing. So I have no issues with it.
No. This is what I think this is what I suspect is happening. They got two senior lawyers from a jurisdiction whom we share common law precedent with.
Yes.
Right? Where even statements that are not intentionally meant to be followed through with, jokes and public criticism is an arrestable offense. And you're right, it probably is going to go to the Privy Council. And then to what extent are they going to apply their standards on us? And you prepare for that battle by having two lawyers from that jurisdiction who will know the cases to say, hey, in this situation, so-and-so was arrested and charged because they made this post or they said this thing.
So in one hand, I am saying it is a very good option because you prepare for the long run. Mm-hmm. So you get the opportunity to bring in these specialized individuals who have experience in that area to prepare for the long run. I have no problem with that. That is proper management of a situation,
right,
of an incident. Good. And I relay in it, a proper management of an incident, right? And on the other hand, from the other hand, it doesn't look like it looks like a listener. You're just bringing these, or we don't have confidence in who we have here and all his arguments, and it's more political and some politics in it. But we have to understand, and I don't want to harp on PDOs too long, Sean, is that there must have consistencies in how you use the PDOs. If you're using the PDOs as a means to continue an investigation, or it should not
in the short run.
In the short run, it can't be you're using a PDO to get time to continue an investigation. If you have evidence to charge, you're charged. If you don't have evidence to charge, what should outside of a state of emergency?
Well, it also seems like they're using PDOs to facilitate the investigation in the first place.
So have we improved, or has the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service improved in the investigative ability to bring matters to close in a short space of time? Are we closing matters? Because you cannot have a state of emergency till thy kingdom come. It will come to an end, right? It must come to an end, Sean. And if it is that you want to use state of emergencies as part of your crime fighting techniques or tools, and one of your main tools, I might add, then we done lost the battle against the crime. Because right now I can say I have read some very disturbing social media posts just now about two serious crimes, multiple home invasions.
Dare I say, if there have been worse things said on political social media posts. So I would like to know when is the standard going to be applied to that? Probably never, because half of the things come from your own supporters.
Well, if we are saying that the SOE is working, crime is down.
Is it?
Why do we keep asking for SOEs? If it keep on asking for SUs and saying that is a means of dealing with it, since the inception of this SUE, where we had threats against high office officials, have any one of those persons been brought before the court or charges laid against them? Those are allegations, those are conspiracies. They are conspiracies just like this one, you know. Because if you're talking about targeting high office officials.
The thing is, we assumed, it's gangsters. It's the gangsters who kill other gangsters and innocent civilians in the process. It's fine that they have PDOs. Or the gangsters are threatening the government. But now I'm starting to think the threats against the government might be as little as, because I get it. Yes, if you think a gangster says, I'm going to kill you, that's going to get you scared. But we have to juxtapose that with the fact that in our society, from since I could remember, isn't that a phrase that normal citizens throw out like water?
And under the laws of Trinidad and Tobago, those are threats that we cannot take lightly. And I'm saying, if persons make threats, or it is alleged that they're conspiring to commit harm against the state itself, right? We don't want to go down that road. We don't want to encourage.
Yeah, but you see, the problem is, what I'm talking about is when a parent tells a child, I'm going to kill you. Is that a threat?
Yes, it is.
Sorry, I guess in 2026,
Sean, don't do that.
It's a threat now.
That is a threat.
It is a threat now, yes, right? But there was a time when parents would say that all the time, and the vast majority of them was not actually literal.
But sometimes it can happen.
Sometimes it can happen. I get that.
And what I'm getting to you is this. At this point in time, we are saying that threats, and we are setting out the foundation that you make certain type of threats. All I'm simply saying is, if you commit the offense, there's evidence to charge the individual, let them go before the court. do not use the
to detain them indefinitely.
Indefinitely, and then at the end of the day, who is going to pay the cake after that? The state is going to pay it.
Ironically,
because there was a
not just the state. Technically, it's a P&M Ministry of Finance that had to cut a lot of those checks for the 2011 state of emergency lawsuits.
And when you look at, there was another investigative journalist who did some investigations, made allegations against an individual. When he posted, there's a lawsuit that the individual won against them because it was said that they did not do proper investigations and made allegations against the individual that caused the person's reputation to be harmed. That is serious.
But when you think about it, to me it all tracks. The vast majority, as is reported, last I checked, of PDOs have not led to charges. And we're talking in some cases, these people have been PDOs since the first government SOE, sometime last year, right? At this point, if you can't find evidence of charge, and we always have intelligence, that's the other thing. So they had intelligence on this conspiracy to murder. We've had intelligence about gangs long before states of emergencies. Doesn't translate into evidence, right? We even had the Minister of Homeland Security debate an issue about, well, the UK's intelligence differs to our intelligence, but we're here, so our intelligence must be right. Meanwhile, other stakeholders like, I've looked at what the UK says and I've done my own research. The UK stuff seems to be consistent with what the statistical analysis says. So even the issue of intelligence, I question how accurate it is or to what extent this is just a shortcut to achieve whatever objectives you want to achieve. The problem is, while it hasn't reached this point yet, we tolerate it as long as we think it's done against criminals. But at what point will the potential abuse of political agendas on this reach the point of no return? Mr. Winston Dukaran, he has an article, and I actually am curious as to what prompted him to say this, because it might be premature even if it ends up being true, and I fear it might end up being true. I'll just read the last paragraph. This is in The Guardian for whoever wants to read it. The real question is, however, would the solution be found in the acceptance of political vendetta becoming a part of the national agenda, or the impartial use of state apparatus be used to adjudicate on the conflicting contentions in the public space? High public office, like the exalted role envisioned in the Office of the General by the Constitution as it exists, must indeed rise to a higher freedom to protect the very integrity of our governance system. Because in 1 week, I think days apart, we had the Minister of Homeland Security say, well, no minister could just order a PDO. But then, like the week before, the AG said, well, the government is going after the 1%. More importantly, doesn't the minister have to authorize the PDOs? I don't think the commissioner could just...
No, the commissioner doesn't. And this is where the PDOs go. The commissioner sends information to the minister, requesting that this individual be detained for further investigation. The minister, in his opinion, because that is the authority given to him,
yes,
he doesn't need to go and get doesn't have facts or anything, and that is our opinion. That yes, the detention of the individual is warranted. And this is not because, this is not this government or the past government. This is how the SOE structure is.
I understand that. The problem is, in a sense, of people proven guilty is dying a very slow death.
Right. So whether we want to bring in political or not, I am throwing that out. This is how an SOE and a PDO operates. So whosoever operated. So let's put it this way. Should the minister not sign any of the PDOs? What next?
Well, you see, because the problem is, what is the check and balance? And it's one thing if, okay, there was obviously some guy that wanted to cause a coup, fine, right? But it's subjective, I get that. But this is why you don't aggressively do something like this.
I am not blaming,
with reckless abandon.
I am not blaming this minister or any minister of national security who had to sign PDOs, right? there's a process and they are the final signature on it. They can agree or disagree. They would follow the advice of the commissioner, because the commissioner and his legal team, why this individual needs to go on be detained for a period of time. My thing about it is that having had that information, it is expected within a certain period with the PDO, charges have to be laid. It is not the minister have to lay charges anymore. It's the commissioner. The commissioner and the police has to lay the charges. So yes, the minister signs to give the police an opportunity to further the investigation and deal with it. But right now, it appears that just hand the minister a PDO, he will sign it because that is part and parcel of his function in an SOE, right? So he's carrying out his due diligence in terms of the SOE. So this is not against the minister.
Well, you see, this is the problem, right? We are assuming, but the process, I think, for it to be, to have some degree of surety, assumes that the minister and the commissioner are operating independently.
So then my question,
and there's nothing to suggest that is the truth.
So my argument, or a different perspective, is that let us don't be the commissioner or the minister at this point in time. This is just, I'm just trying to be objective at this point in time. It means that we have just highlighting, or we are highlighting, there is a flaw in the process at this point in time.
You see, I appreciate that. The problem is, when the first thing happened, we want to be objective and patient. But one could argue that the public is witnessing a series of decisions that all compound each other, that could lead us to a bad result, a very catastrophically bad result. So now the question is, you are correct in that we should account for objectivity, consider things objectively. The flip side of that is, while we look at the arguments that an objective perspective would give, and we have to give it all of the weight and consideration that it deserves, we also can't just ignore the context of what we've seen before.
And there lies the challenge that you face. There is a process that we have been asked to allow a process to go through. We are asked to allow the courts to make decisions. But at the same time, when we hear how the process is being applied indifferently in certain circumstances without a clear understanding of how it is, there are a lot of persons in this area, in the center, trying to figure out what is really taking place. And that is where leaves a lot of questions and a lot of perspectives coming from the side where it is more political than it should really be.
Because Marv Gonzalez warned, this is going to be a government by SOE. They're going to just continue. We're going to have 5 years of SOE. And I'm sure everybody was like, we'll believe that when we see it, Mr. Gonzalez. But now we're kind of like, we're kind of seeing it. It's not proven yet, but we're kind of seeing it. But more importantly, this is why emergency powers are supposed to be limited for an emergency. We knew that emergency powers means your rights are suspended. But we kind of fooled ourselves. There's no curfew. You know, I'm living my life. Are we on an SOE? I don't feel like we're on an SOE. And while a normal citizen has not been victimized yet, dare I say that we're seeing more and more things pointing potentially, or we could perceive that it's pointing to that direction. Because listen, Mr. Samaru, he's not part of the 1%. He's not a financier. He's not politically connected.
Yeah, true,
right?
True.
And look, the protesters on the Samaru shooting. Now, yeah, if you want to push things in front of the DPP's office, be prepared to be arrested. I have no issue with that. But the police said, we consulted with the Labor Day March. They said she wasn't invited. Michael Anderson said she was invited and that she was right behind him. And I saw something, if it is true and not taken out of context and not mislabeled, of him speaking to the police in the moment. So now, regardless of what the truth is, because a lot of what I say people need to understand is what I think the public is thinking. And that the government needs to understand what the public is thinking in order to adjust accordingly to manage the public's expectations. Because from the public point of view, the police are playing, at best, a game of semantics, at worst, outright falsehoods.
And to compound that...
And she's been victimized, Mr. Phillips.
To compound the inconsistency, there are about 7 so-called gang leaders that was issued detention orders.
Right.
PDOs. With allegations as to what the possible rules and what their activities were for them to be detained. Very good. I am glad. I am happy that we are seeing so-called gang leaders being detained. I don't want them to be detained alone.
Mm-hmm.
I want charges. I am wanting to hear charges laid against the criminal elements and the gang leaders. If you want to deal with it holistically and dismantle gangs, we have to start to show that, listen, if you are part and parcel of gangs, the consequences are you'll be arrested and charged and put before the court. You have to have that certain foundation. If you just have prevented detention orders, just issue to these individuals to have them in prison or detained in certain facilities, and no charges laid after this entire period. And I am saying, after a whole year, let the public know that, listen, the PDOs are working, and we have a number of persons detained who have been detained. They are charged and before the court.
The implication for the ZOSO legislation, I know you had practical analysis that was objective, but the implication by the government's own statements is that we have very little hope to get to that point of charging the bulk of these people. We need to keep the PDOs going. And, okay, we couldn't get ZOSO, so we'll just have another state of emergency and start the ball rolling all over again, right? The thing is, this situation now, I see a potential scenario where the tolerance of a state of emergency and its usage legally could be affected, and even the usage of the Privy Council could be affected. But with regards to this, because of how this might play out, right? Depending on if the attempt is to utilize a foreign interpretation and foreign precedent and foreign culture to dictate what should be our legal norms here. But with regards to the state of emergency, right? Because in 2011, it was a case of, well, we didn't charge them, they sued the state, they got 6-figure settlements. But the scale now of what they're doing, yes, we assume that they're all gangsters. The problem is people are supposed to be innocent until guilty in the eyes of the law, and that will apply in full effect, not just with the suspension of rights in a state of emergency. It should still exist, but it will apply once the SOE ends, right? And yes, it has to end, otherwise we're not a democracy, Madam Prime Minister. So stop lecturing people about Cuba when you're basically doing the same thing, but with the veneer of the democratic process made available to you. The scale of the detentions, not just in the number, but the time frame. And then depending on how much more, because Mr. Samaru is under PDO, from what I understand, right? Correct us if we're wrong about that. So the motivations behind it now, it being potentially viewed as political, dare I say that if someone is daring enough, and if this continues to amount more and more situations to add fuel to the fire, someone might even say this could be a situation of defrauding the state. Because at some point it went from trying to solve crime to just trying to band-aid crime and not caring about because it's reasonable to assume if you can't charge, even if they're criminals, you're going to get sued because that happened already, right? But then now, if you go to the father of a shooting victim, or business people who just said, probably not even in a public place, potentially in a private setting, things they shouldn't have said, well, all of a sudden now you're looking at potential grounds for accusing the government of political persecution and taking advantage of an SOE. And this might literally rip the whole fabric of what should be a tool in emergencies apart, and then 20 years down the line, 30 years down the line, we have some grand emergency, but we are once bitten, twice shy over this situation, that tool is no longer there. I'm not saying it's bound to happen. That's my fear.
And so you're using a tool that has an intended purpose for a specific time and using it outside of which, or in my opinion, it's been used outside of how it should be used, right? That's how I seen it from watching it inside out and outside in. You really know the difference on how it is working. But I just want to change the topic a little while, a little bit. Recently we saw, I'm seeing in the media that the commissioner has dismissed or revoked 17 police officers from the organization. Mm-hmm. I also saw that information that was circulating that out of these 17 persons, there was information shared about what charges they will lead. One person specifically, one of the officers specifically, was charged and convicted outside of our jurisdiction in another country. I could understand that person being dismissed immediately.
Yeah, because there's something on record.
Because that person admitted to, and it was charged. They were charged outside, and they served, and had served time. But this is something extremely dangerous, because persons were charged, and some of them were charged as early as last year. Now they are being dismissed. Is it that we are saying? Is it that this is now going to say that? How is this going to affect a number of police officers in the organization who are already under some psychological stress, physical, when you have a SOE going on over and over. Psychology, we're talking about allegations could be made against you. You could end up on a charge, and before you get chance to have your day in court and defend yourself, you lost your job.
Mm-hmm. Oh, by that standard, David Lee should have been removed as an MP before the election, as a candidate. Just saying.
No,
and I've never called for him to be removed in any capacity.
No, I can't speak to other citizens.
But he has charges against him.
Well, no, I don't know how that is operate outside of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. But the commissioner has the authority to exercise such. I believe he have the authority to exercise that. But exercising that authority to this extent, I mean, like I say, I always like to be objective and give a different perspective. It speaks to some level of integrity and transparency in the organization when dealing with rogue elements. That is on one hand. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, charge does not mean guilt. So if someone has been charged and not been convicted, then what are you saying? That once a charge is laid against an individual, that individual is no longer able. So I can't defend myself. So because my reputation don't go on already, because I've been charged. Whether because I'm not innocent or guilty, but mere fact that I've been dismissed already, I assume that I'm guilty.
So I know what you intended to say when you said it speaks to integrity and transparency. But I think we need to go a step further. Mm-hmm. It's supposed to speak to integrity and transparency.
I always say that.
But think about it. The process, there's nothing seemingly about this process that is operating within the bounds of transparency and integrity.
No,
if it is, you are assuming guilt.
If I applaud the commissioner, if it is his stance that he is going to take for the future, and the foundation that he's setting the foundation within the organization, I applaud that stance, because it says to the new persons who are coming into the organization and the current officers in the organization, if you step outside the lines of the law and you bring and you do things that is contrary to law, put the police service in a different light, and you could lose. We don't want this type of things in the organization. We get rid of you. But I am simply saying this: it is dangerous to say somebody is charged. Because if somebody is charged, charged does not mean innocent or guilty. It just means that you have to answer a question. You have to be able to go before the court. It's presumed innocent until proven guilty. But if you're telling, in this circumstance, I don't know how this is going to play off. Yeah?
So here's the thing. This is one of the dangers. And we've seen this when you had the whole defund the police scenario, right? Because people thought, oh, the police in the United States are bad, we need to defund the police, whatever, whatever. Ironically, it promoted the good cops to leave and the bad cops to stay. Because the bad cops were there, they were motivated by wanting to exercise power and authority, you know, wanted to lord things over people, right? Wanted to essentially be mean and bad people, and they didn't mind the criticism. Because that didn't matter to them. The people who those kinds of criticisms affected were the ones that were well-intentioned, well-meaning. That's why it affected them. They didn't want to be viewed as evil people. And if they felt that they were being treated unfairly, they're like, well, this is not worth it. I am being criticized for trying to do my job, and I am also potentially being prevented from doing my job properly. I might as well seek life elsewhere. And when the commissioner is basically saying, I'm going to come down hard, prospective candidates that are high-quality candidates are going to say, well, this is not a fair workplace environment. What's the point of this? I'm going to sacrifice, and then arbitrarily, because somebody accused me of something, the commissioner is going to want to show that he has a set of brass you-know-whats and just fire me out-hand
and you know
without due process.
The irony behind this is that the organization is in a recruitment drive.
You're going to get bad recruits because those are only going to be the ones to tolerate things like this.
Well, I can't speak to these individuals as to their circumstances. But at face value, if out of the 17, based on some of the information and based on what the information is circulating on social media, one admitted guilt already.
Right. So maybe more did?
I don't know.
Maybe?
Maybe not. So it is not clear as to what. But I'm saying that we can't take somebody who has, you can't assume that somebody who is charged for an offense is guilty of the offense, because they needs to have their day in court.
But that's what we're doing.
Yes.
That's what the PDOs are. That's how we view the gangsters who are, because generally speaking, in El Salvador, the murder rate was so high that if we had the same murder rate here, we would have had 1,400 murders a year. That's how bad it got over there. You could do things like take shortcuts when you're desperate. Because when you're desperate, the negative consequences are not as important. You acknowledge the fact, however, that these measures can have blowback.
Yeah.
Right? Significant blowback. But if you're desperate enough, if we're dying anyway, we might as well do something risky that could risk death. Because we're dying anyway, right? But if you're not there yet, the negative, we're not dying, but we should still do something risky that might cause our death? No, that's crazy. And I fear that's what's happening. Because we look at El Salvador, and we see people saying we should do that here. And I don't know if maybe gung-ho armchair tactical officers think, ooh, that might be a good idea, let's adopt some of that philosophy. Maybe it's subconscious, I don't know. Maybe it's the government, you know, egging on the commissioner. Maybe the commissioner's in lockstep. Maybe it's somebody else, I don't know. But we see these extreme measures because in El Salvador, it is a situation where innocence and guilt is not necessarily that important, right? And people who are suspected are being locked up in those big boxes. But the thing is, the people were so desperate, they are willing to tolerate that with eyes wide open. I don't think we are. I don't think we've sunk so low where it's that bad yet, right? Because technically speaking, things were manageable when it was seemingly done responsibly. It's just that now the implication is, no. We like to take shortcuts on things. We want PDOs, not evidence to charge. We want to fire, not wait for the due process. And it's almost like I wonder if the commissioner thought, yes, this is going to show that I am trying to clean up the police service. But the problem is if you do it the wrong way, you're not fighting against the negativity, you're adding fuel to the negativity. All right, we have a call. I'm sorry I took up so much time just now. We have a call on the line. Caller, good morning. You on here?
Hi, good morning.
Morning,
John?
morning. Yes.
Yeah, I would like to make an input and also ask the officer there a question, please. I was a member of the protective services, and before any action could be taken within the service against any officer, he or she was required to go before an internal tribunal and to defend himself or herself with all the status of a normal legal court convened to do so. I am sure the police have the same internal system before something like this with the 17 officers in public. I just wonder the officer there, I know him very well, so if there is an internal system in the police service, a tribunal, like what the prisons have and what the army has and what the fire service have, before these matters could be aired publicly in terms of the action taken, because I know due process is followed at these tribunals with defense witnesses and all the other aspects of a legal trial. So, officer, could you just enlighten us, please?
Right. So, just to answer, the disciplining process and a criminal process is two different things. If the officer has charged for something with respect to discipline within the organization, the tribunal will exist.
Right.
And you could put persons. But if it is an open court offense, in any context that it's a criminal offense.
That goes before the criminal.
Yes. So the criminal courts will deal with that, and they will get their lawyers. In both aspects, they get their lawyers. But a disciplinary process, you may be fined some days' pay, maybe certain recommendations will be made, some mitigations will be made. But in a criminal process, it can last. There's difference. You could end up with make jail time, or your entire matter could be squashed with respect to that.
But I guess the concern would be you're an officer, you have accusations over your head, right?
Yes.
So on some level, some of them might be true, and is it right for them to keep operating as police officers, I guess, is the big question here. The flip side to that is we see parliamentarians do it all the time. So what is the standard we want to adopt?
We can't be comparing both of them at the same time, sure. we have a call from Ra.
I speak to what the public is thinking, because I think that's one of the things the public is going to say. And listen, it doesn't matter if you want to answer me. If you can't answer that question, you're going to have a problem on your hands with some disgruntled people. Caller from Arima, good morning. Caller, you on here?
Hey, good morning, Sean. Good morning, Mr. Ali.
Morning.
I think to dismiss 17 officers, it had to be something very serious. And to me, I'm glad the Commissioner of Police have taken that strong firm to do that. You understand? And that will alleviate other officers from doing what they're not supposed to do in the service. So that is a good way to go. I'll give them thumbs up for that. Right? Thank you very much. That is all I have to say on this.
Thank you, caller. That's a valid point.
No, we're not saying that it's a wrong decision, you know. And like I did say publicly just now that I applaud the commissioner if this is good, if it's the foundation they're going to set, right? And the stands that they're going to make, right? I applaud that. You do wrong things, and you go outside of the standard operating procedures within the organization and beyond the law, right? You pay the consequences, and you set the tone in the organization that if you run afoul of the law, you shouldn't be part of the organization. However, like the other caller mentioned, there are processes that need to be followed. And I'm simply saying, charge cannot be innocent. You can't say if somebody has been charged and say that that person is guilty automatically. you must be able to defend, you must be given your day in court. And if it is this matter has been dealt with, if these individuals, because there's no proper explanation here as to I'm just using some, I'm just speculating as to what the information is. But what is presented in social media, you realize that the type of comments you're already getting, that fire all of them, it have a lot of rogue police officers in the organization, get rid of more of them. And I'm simply saying, if we're going down that road, continue going down that road, right? Then we would not have police officers persons wanting to become members of the police service.
Well, not just that. If we take shortcuts in the process and we don't do our cross our T's and dot our I's, how are we sure that we're getting rid of the rogue ones? What if we get rid of the good ones?
And it's just allegations.
Here's the thing though. If you try to parent your child inconsistently, they're going to figure it out. They're going to get upset, right? More importantly, caller, I want to agree with you. The problem is the context of everything that happened since January and before. Because even the body cameras things, to me, is a clue or is part of the context here. But let me go with something very direct, unfortunately. There was a very high-profile situation of officers I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe we were told, innocent until proven guilty. We have to go through the process. A very high-profile situation, which should be very obvious if you think about it. Because we had 3 officers shoot a man with his hands up, and we were basically given some version of, well, you know, trust the process, innocent until proven guilty. Don't mind the fact that the public, at the very least, wanted an explanation, which was not forthcoming. I'm not saying that we should have been scapegoating them, but how the communication has been handled. You don't even you had to explain to my audience that the process is that they get counseling for all police shootings.
But in that circumstance, there's similarities, but there's 2 significant differences here. The person has not been charged. The officers in that situation has not been charged. In this situation here, officers have been charged. Charges have been laid against them. I am simply saying,
okay, all right.
If charges are laid against you, does it automatically mean that I am guilty of an offense and I should lose my job?
But I'm speaking about now, again, as always, consider my perspective not just being the arguments of what the facts of the case are, but also the arguments of the public's perception, because that will drive the narrative, the court of public opinion, and thus the effectiveness of public leadership, right? The effectiveness of the police, because if people are not willing to cooperate with the police, arguably, all of the gains made by the media ambassadors over the last 5 years is potentially been washed away in the last 5 months. Because to the public, what they're seeing is the commissioner being inconsistent. The commissioner, for whatever reason, potentially playing favorites. And the real sin is not that he did anything inconsistent. The real sin is that he did not explain his process properly, because we want to keep things hidden. But it doesn't work that way. That's why I see the body cameras now could add context to this. Because it comes back down to the fact that everybody who said do better on the body camera issue warned them about this very same thing that happened with the Samaru shooting. Now you have a big hole in the narrative that you cannot easily disprove.
So these officers here, all of their reputation has just been, they just lost all their reputation.
And again, what do we have
because of an allegation made, charges. They have not gotten their day in court as yet.
Haven't we heard in other situations where we need to protect against that and not do that? It could affect, well, first of all, it could affect cases.
So
their arrest, can it not unduly negatively influence their court matters?
So it begs the question now that
they're firing.
What about the current officers who are on suspension with charges against them, and their matters are before the courts, and they are dealing with their matters before the courts? Are we now going to say that all those officers should follow in this same light? is he going to dismiss all those officers now? Because you're done deal with 17. What about the rest? Because there are a number of officers who are on suspension, awaiting charges or have been charged on suspension and have to get a day in court to clear their name.
We have another caller, line caller. Good morning, you're here?
Yes, hello.
Morning, morning.
Yes, I wanted to ask one question regarding the detention orders. As far as I'm aware, the Constitution requires that a tribunal be appointed.
Yes.
And any of the detainees could go appear before the tribunal.
Yes.
Has that tribunal been appointed? That's what I'm trying to...
Yes, it has. It has been. It's reported to have been.
It has been?
Yes, but the tribunal can only make recommendations to the Minister of Homeland Security.
They cannot overturn.
Recommendations, yes. But these other people, and then there are these other officers who have been dismissed.
No, this is
the SOB tribunal won't apply here.
No, this is from the commissioner has under the authority of the commissioner.
I've got my answers on the tribunal already.
Right.
Yes. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead, caller.
Go ahead.
These people who have 17 who have been dismissed. Yeah, I'm saying the 17 who have been dismissed. What is the situation?
Well, I guess
it suggests that some process has taken place, because the commissioner is not crazy.
Even if a process has taken place, they still have the opportunity to challenge the decision by the commissioner, and that's where the courts are. That's what the courts are there for.
Which could be another lawsuit.
So this is what I'm saying. That
or 16 to 17 more lawsuits.
Yes. So there's this can be a possibility for a number of officers at this point in time, considering their options.
Caller, anything more?
Well, I have a different opinion, but I don't want to mention that now.
Okay.
Because it doesn't make any sense.
Okay. All right. Thank you, caller. Here's the thing, and Mr. Dabidi, I apologize, but I need to use historical precedents, right? That's why I'm going to bring up the PNM now. I think we trusted the process with the previous administration, and in some ways, certain things got worse, like with the Auditor General stuff, right? So now the question is, with this administration, are we willing to give enough benefit of the doubt? Well, because the caller said there must be a process. And my answer to that is, why must there be a reasonable process? Why must we assume that there is a reasonable process? And I don't know if there is enough shown by the current leadership in whatever you're talking about, whether it's national security, police, government, whatever, that we should be so willing. There's still certain things that we should give the benefit of the doubt for, but I think I've reached the point now where I cannot help but have questions on a lot of things. This is one of them, because it is in line with a pattern of behavior that so far has not proven to be positive. So far it has proven to be negative, and just when you think it couldn't get any worse, it gets a little bit worse, and we're incrementally sliding into the abyss. We have a caller from Piarco. Caller, good morning. You on here? Morning, caller.
Good morning.
Morning.
My question is concerning the Hadi. Have they been charged?
As far as we're aware, no.
Okay. As far as the information out in the public is that they were detained for conspiracy to murder because apparently they made certain remarks. Does that warrant the need for two King's Counsel and other high-profile attorneys? Thank you.
Thank you, caller. I mean, that's an interesting point.
But at the same time, like I mentioned earlier, we can sit here and make assumptions and make projections and ask the questions. We're not privy to the information or the intelligence that the investigators have. They are the ones that is presenting this information. And that is why I am saying, because our institutions, such as the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, in these cases, in these matters, fail over the years to properly inform the public and give the public sufficient information to work with, for them to be satisfied that it is not no conspiracy, no political agendas ahead in terms of how they share and communicate the information. We are now in a position that a lot of persons are questioning what is the circumstance. And I'm saying it's difficult, as difficult as it is for many persons right now, Sean, to trust in a process.
Well,
we do already have the confidence overall to trust the processes right now.
Because high-profile matters have shown our national intelligence is spotty at best. The intelligence said Brent Thomas was running. Look how that worked out. Because they took shortcuts, different government, still shortcuts.
This, as the caller mentioned, many persons are asking questions that they would not get the answer to because the answer is not for general knowledge. Those are that is information only can be presented in a court because it forms part and parcel of the evidence. And the only person that would be able to get that is their defense.
There's the answers, and then there is answers.
So
it doesn't have to reach this point. We have another caller. Caller, good morning. You're on the air.
Yes, I again. You know, I find seeing that they put their names, right? They put the whole 17 of their names there. Why don't put the charges? Why they don't put the charges alongside their name? So the public, we will know what they have been charged for, right? Because in the past, plenty of them do crap, do lots of things, went in people's house and do lots of things. So I find they should put by their name the charges they charge them with. Thank you.
Thank you, caller. I mean, here's the thing though, ironically, and this is why, again, if you start off with a wrong decision, your subsequent decisions might end up or will end up being wrong more often than not. What is the objective? People who are trying to be objective and trying to have measured responses with regards to the charges against Kaya Sealy. Well, she's charged, she's not convicted. But now, the Commissioner of Police is basically saying, yeah, that standard, I don't need to use it when I feel like it. Potentially. We don't necessarily know. There might be stuff we don't know. Like you said, maybe there's more to it than just they were charged and maybe we're missing something that would explain the Commissioner's decision. So we're always ready to be corrected by good factual information. But the thing is, we're trying to tell people, look, she's charged, she's not guilty. And the Commissioner is potentially saying, these officers who are charged, we ain't gonna wait to determine if they were guilty. Now, maybe most of them might end up being guilty, whether it could be proven in court of law or not. Maybe, let's say for argument's sake, can we guarantee that all of them? We have Sanfan on the line. Call, good morning, you're on the air.
Good morning, Sean.
Morning.
I do not have a full legal background. What was presented in the PDUs is not the full context of the full information. It's just a overview, or maybe a summary of an overview of some of the information.
I really not hearing you, Mr. Ali. You're sounding very distant. So I don't know if it's the connection.
Oh, so okay, you hear me now?
No, I don't think it's anything to do with the mic.
Hello?
Yeah.
Yes, I hear you a little better now.
All right, so what I'm saying is that based on that, we may not be able to make an assumption of or what other offenses that they could be laid. I would leave that for the DPP having this gone through some of the further facts or the evidence that will be presented to him when that time reach. So it is not that there's only one charge or not, but the nature of the charges that we are discussing here, conspiracy to murder is a serious offense. And so we're not saying guilty or not, that's the court will decide that.
Basically, I think they,
yes,
don't have to put all the potential charges on the PDO.
Yeah, I understand, but what I'm saying is that if it is that based on the information on the PDO, you remember those people, they were first arrested before the PDOs were issued. They were arrested based on evidence that they would have had to arrest them. And I am surprised that based on the information that they had, that the evidence that would have prompted the arrest, that the information that they would have presented to the DPP that they wouldn't charge, at least for sedition in this case. So there are, and I agree with Mr. Ali, there's still a lot. I think the PDO is being used because not in the right sense, but the authorities have the ability to do this, to hold these people while they gather additional evidence before they take the information to the DPP. So what we see now, the state of emergency is still is a crutch for the police service, and we going down this road where, with the reliance on the state of emergency and the powers of the emergency powers, that the police service is investigative abilities is being eroded by themselves, but because of the reliance on the emergency powers. That's all I have to say. Have a good weekend, gentlemen.
Thank you, caller. Now, I have another thing with regards to shortcuts, because that's how I perceive it. We're taking shortcuts. They got Brent Thomas by utilizing shortcuts, and that came back to bite that situation, right? Don't mind that different government, we can't get a resolution with regards to that. We can't get an explanation for that. Which to me implies that the politics of a situation is not as straightforward as they would like the supporters to make it think, or feel. In our society, one of the obvious places where we take shortcuts. See all this red tape? Now, I am entitled to get my government service for whatever, my goods off the port, my documentation, but there's too much red tape. I need a favor. And then, once you give a friend or family a favor, all of a sudden, hey, you could help me out? You could help me out? I'll give you a little something to help me out. And it's, we cut it through the red tape. Wait. Then all of a sudden, now the official is offering, give me something, and I will cut through the red tape for you. Then it turns to, give me something, and I will get authorization that you are not entitled to get, that you should not get, things that you do not deserve. Now, we're going from cutting through the red tape to corruption.
So once you cut the red tape, you're going corruption.
Right. But you start small and you work your way down to the things that, because the small stuff we ain't going to be bothered by. But we don't appreciate the fact that it never stays there. It always descends into the extreme stuff.
So,
and with the PDOs and with the firing, I think they're both shortcuts, and we need to understand that human nature suggests, highly implies, and has been proven more often than not to be true, shortcuts leads to corruption.
Yes. And then
all right.
And
30 seconds.
30 seconds. Overall, everything that we are doing right now and in our society, all these shortcuts, small, long, cutting the red tapes, otherwise, is corruption. And we have been so comfortable in the environment of, it's a small thing I do, but that little small thing escalates into something bigger. and it's corruption across the board. All I can say right now is that in the next 20 seconds, that this PDO shown cannot be, or the state of emergency cannot be our consistent crime fighting plan.
To be fair, even Minister Stage said state of emergency is not a plan. All right, with that said, we have to end things there. Thanks to all the callers. Interesting discussions, good points, good questions, and that's what it's all about. Just once you're not afraid to going where the truth leads you to, try not to have preconceived notions on anything. We also try not to have them, but the conversations will have to continue next week. So until then, remember your allegiance to the Republic and to each other. Stay safe. Don't forget, it's nice, be nice. Have a good weekend, folks. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.